Monday, Monday, Monday. Happy Bloody Monday, everyone. Welcome to Crypto Live with Bitcoin Bravado. Today, I am here with Bitcoin Birch, BTC Jack Sparrow, and your boy Kyle. I am the Bitcoin Broski. We're here to have some fun. Thank you for those of you who keep tuning in. We know it has not been the most pleasant market open today. I guess technically it never closes, but we started watching it this morning, and holy shit, what a market it is to watch right now. Guys, what is going on with Bitcoin? Holy shit.
To be honest, actually, even though things are dumping really badly today, and they did last week as well, it is refreshing to see some volatility. We'll talk about that later. There's probably still money to be made, but first of all, I think a lot of people are a bit solely today, man. I think a lot of people are really about to quit crypto. I think Birch was absolutely right. You showed me a couple of tweets today, and people are not pleased, man.
Yeah, we've seen this before. I actually have similar tweets from November 2017 as well that I have saved up that I'll be putting out there at some point soon. No one likes to see. It's just another Monday for us here on the podcast. Just another red Monday. What I found interesting is that the last 2 Mondays, crypto seemed to be a leading indicator to the open of the United States stock market, the NASDAQ. So we have red across the board. And I think you're right. I think we do see a lot of capitulation, and I'm not mad about it.
How you doing, Kyle?
I'm all right, man. I'm all right. It's definitely, it's a shakeout and it's brutal. It's tough to experience. I lost a good amount of money on the drop from 6K breach of support. But, you have to adjust, right? So I think a lot of us, hedged our positions early last week, and I was able to profit off this most recent move down. It's what you have to do and evolve as a trader is, as bullish as we can be on this technology and this space and the long-term future prospects of where this is truly going or where I believe it's going. It's tough to combat that bias, because we are in a bear market and we are still breaking down from the euphoria that came in 2017. Like, no one has any perspective on crypto, or at least the vast majority don't. They don't understand that, 2 years ago, price of Bitcoin was $500. Like, what are we talking about? Like, yeah, it's $5,000 today. You just haven't been here for long enough. Like, earn your stripes, suck it up, and get over it. Like, I'm tired of hearing people complain about this shit. It's what it is. So
I do understand. I mean, like, it hurts when you wake up and you lose money and you thought you were gonna get, you were going to the sky, and you find out you're starting to doubt yourself and the entire space, whether you're right or wrong. Well, people do that. I mean, we try to reevaluate what's going on every time, and the market is a market, and the market can go up, down, sideways, and you can still make money out of it. But as an investor, it's a lot harder. As a trader, volatility is a God gift. It's great, but as an investor, it hurts. And just to sympathize with a lot of people out there, over the last month, my relationship ended, and then the market crashes. It can get really, really tough on people, on your mindset, etc. And you have to find yourself back, and you have to think, okay, how am I going to approach this? How am I going to solve it? How am I going to beat tomorrow's movements? And how am I going to get on top, out of this at the end of the story?
Yeah, there's two types of people. That's so well said. So thanks for sharing that. There's two types of people who are primarily involved in crypto at the retail level, especially those listening on the podcast or joining us live right now. We got the investors who will typically and laughably call themselves hodlers. And then we have people who trade or are building in this business and have way more exposure to it. So getting through the emotional piece is the hardest part. Every one of us here this is our entire life, right? And so I'm not emotionally in a bad place because of the price action on crypto, because back in April, I made a decision and I said, this is clearly a bear market. Bear markets usually aren't 3 months. So I'm going to take out what I need. I'm going to get into some Tether here. I'm going to move some things around, and I'm going to delete my portfolio app. And that's exactly what, for my own emotional well-being, because I knew from that point forward, everything that I had, I was okay with Dragon going back to 6 cents. The Dragon that I'm holding, I was like, whatever, this is like, I'm making these conscious decisions. And so it was a kind of a worst case scenario, but now we've seen that, right? Now we're seeing these coins be absolutely wrecked. Now with the fresh powder that I have, I'm looking to maybe make some more decisions. The reason I get kind of sad, or if you will, about the market is because the rest of my life revolves around it as well. Several businesses in this space we're building cool technology and cool stuff, much of which I don't even talk about personally or publicly rather. And, when you're an entrepreneur and you're just trying to push through, you have those days where you just get kicked in the face or kicked in the gut, or you lose money, you lose time, you lose resources. And how you respond at the bottom is what's going to define you. No one gives a shit about how you celebrate your successes. It's really how you bounce back. So let's hop into a good show.
Perfectly said. Yeah. So guys, today we're going to talk about ICOs. There's a lot to dig into here. Obviously the SEC there's been some news lately. We're going to talk about a lot. If you are in the chat, let us know your thoughts. If you've got questions, fire away. We want this to be as interactive as possible. Let's jump right into it, guys. The headline itself says it all. Are ICOs done? Shills scams and the SEC. So jump in, guys. Right now, ICOs have been a thing where 2017, obviously, a lot came from them. 2018, it's been a changing of the guard, if you will, when it comes to the mindset around ICOs. What are your guys' thoughts overall on just ICOs in general?
I can start by sharing some data, just for the folks out there, and then we can dig into that. So everyone knows that ICOs raised many billions of dollars in 2017. In 2018, there's actually been over 1,100 ICOs, which is kind of crazy if you think about it. In 2017, there was only 875 ICOs. So there's been more companies attempting to have ICOs in 2018. So that's contrary to what I think a lot of people believe. In 2017, it was a lot easier for them to raise money, obviously, but there's actually been more money, and this is based on data from ICOdata.io. There's actually been more money raised in 2018 as well, primarily because of January and February. So if you take out January and February, the year on the whole has been absolutely shit. November, $49 million has been raised on ICOs. In October, $145 million was raised, $167 million in September. So that's some of the data. Now let's talk about it. Do you think $50 million is dead?
I don't know, man. Those stats are surprising. Like you said, in 2018, you would assume that you would have seen just a slow progression in ICOs really being dead from a financing standpoint. They wouldn't be getting the same capital interest, and for me, that just indicates that this is not. You can't just say these are people that have made a ton of money in 2017 that are still contributing to these ICOs. Yep. To me, it says that there's someone with real capital out there that is expanding their horizon and investing in the blockchain space. That's not just someone that got super rich off crypto. Like, this is real money making real investment decisions. I personally, a bit of a tangent here on ICOs. I love the idea of an ICO. I think it's a revolutionary way to raise capital, and it's going to be something that never goes away. ICOs get a bad rap because a lot of people, there's a lot of scam and there's a lot of stress and risk involved, but it's awesome because we actually get to participate in the creation of these companies and these communities. So I love the idea of ICOs, and it does not sound like they're dead to me at all.
Yeah. I think what we're seeing too is like we're very Western focused personally, right? And so I think if you take the United States and set it aside, and maybe even bucket like United States, Canada, maybe even Great Britain, because they all kind of operate a little bit similarly, put those all into a bucket. I think the majority of the ICO funds have probably come from not the United States. So yeah, I think $50 million in a single month funding ICOs is probably more just it's healthy. Like that feels like a healthier number across. Remember, and this is across a lot of ICOs, right? There's over 1,000 that have occurred this year. So, and many of them occur over the course of many months. So I'm not sure when like the start point is with ICO data, but yeah.
Well, just the thought, I know, Kyle, I think you hit the nail on the head. You're looking at bigger players that are getting into the ICO space now through, private sales or pre-sales or whatever. I think a lot of companies, especially for American citizens, are looking to curb U.S. citizen investments, as a whole when it comes to the ICO space. But we are seeing a big push from that big money. And there was an article that came out, I want to say a couple of months ago, that highlighted a certain fund, which I'm not going to mention, and their practices on getting into ICOs and then getting out in profit before tokens were really ever released on the open market. And I think as long as that is able to be done, you will have people buying these ICOs because investing is investing, right? Buy for $1, sell for $2. I don't care when I can do that. If I can do that and be profitable, I'm going to do it. And until that is a moot point, I think the ICOs are going to continue to thrive. And they've done okay.
So I think the real question here, though, is how does that affect the retail trader? Not everyone is an accredited investor or has a crypto fund. We're a little bit more in a special boat. So when we're talking to our listeners or our subs out there, most of them are largely retail investors. So ICOs and crowd selling and crowdfunding, which are two different things. It's kind of the best way to compare the two is like crowdfunding is if you have a product that you're going to physically build, people are going to pre-order that product and you're going to use that money, obviously, but when the product comes out, they get that physical product. Whereas on crowd selling, it's IP or it's tech or it's tokens, it's some other digital non-tangible product. We know how big that market is. Just look at Indiegogo, GoFundMe, Kickstarter. Slightly, obviously, different premises, but the same idea on the platform side. So we're going to continue to see strength in that space, and these numbers, I think, are going to grow from 50 billion. The problem is and maybe not a problem, but with the SEC clamping down, what they're trying to do is protect United States investors, and their opinion on how to best do that is only allow investors who are rich, who are in the top 2%, to be able to participate in these sorts of things because they feel like those people can afford to take those risks. It puts less risk on the economy if those are reserved opportunities. So I'm curious to think I'm curious to know what you guys think about ICOs existing, but only for these accredited investors. Should retail have an opportunity to participate?
My honest opinion on how the SEC does that is, and the CFTC, is they are there to protect the big money. I think it's bullshit that someone who doesn't have a lot of money doesn't know how to properly invest or has a brain to think about things. I think it's bullshit to exclude those people. I think ICOs are a beautiful way to actually open that inclusivity, unless you actually don't open up your laws to allow people to do that. If you think about how most of these big funds, Warren Buffett, for example, started out, he literally had no money when he started out. Is he a liability for the economy? No. It's a way to provide access to investment opportunities for people who already have money, who want to make more money, and by them allowing them to go first, it's they can make more money. If there's a lot more people out there who want to participate, their share in those investments become lower. And of course, there's probably other reasons that I haven't looked into why they actually have these rules. But in essentially, what I think is bullshit.
Yeah, I agree to an extent from a personal standpoint on the American regulation around investing in securities, and there's a lot of mixed emotions on how I want to respond to this, because do I think regulation is good for the masses that are trying to invest in securities? Do I personally think that since I'm not an accredited investor, should I not be allowed to participate in these? And then also, to be an accredited investor, the actual qualifications it takes to be accredited is a really silly qualification.
Arbitrary.
Yeah, it's very arbitrary. It's based on, how much, you're actually worth. Does that make you a good investor if you're worth a lot of money? there's a lot of things that I have questions about and don't understand the way the system is set up. For me personally, I want to be able to invest in whatever I want to invest in at any point if someone's offering it to me. But I understand that there's a lot of people in this country that would be taken advantage of if the SEC didn't put out these guidelines.
And have them already, right?
Yeah, right, exactly. And the one thing that I like about the SEC's approach is that they haven't banned the technology. They've never come out and said that ICOs are a bad thing and that we're going to ban them, but they've released their statement, and on a case-by-case basis, they'll reel in companies and ICOs where they see fit. I don't have a problem with that. I like the fact that they're not. I like the fact we're not China, where we simply just don't have any control and just ban things because we have to.
Yep.
I like
That's an important distinction. I don't know if a lot of people understand that too, is that ICOs haven't been banned by the United States or most countries. They've been banned in some places.
Well, right? And it's, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, they haven't really been banned in very many places at all. I think that this is more, I think the lack of funding is a combination of a few things, but I think market cycle is playing the biggest role. I think that the biggest reason ICOs aren't raising a lot of money is because people are wrecked, and their target audience, the retail investor, doesn't have 100 Ethereum to throw around anymore. Whatever. So I think that's the bigger play, and that's why I think ICOs are going to continue to grow. I actually like what the SEC is doing. I agree that most ICOs are securities if you look at the Howey test. And if we can, Broski, can you explain to the listeners kind of like what it takes to what is the Howey test and what it takes to pass the Howey test?
Yeah, so I am not a lawyer by any stretch of the imagination, nor are any of us financial advisors. By the way, I know we didn't give our normal disclaimer, but we are not financial advisors. None of this is financial advice. We're just four guys having a conversation on what we think is going on here. But with the Howey test, there's 4 criteria, right? And all have to be met. The first, there's an investment of money. Second, there's an expectation of profits from the investment. Third, the investment is in a common enterprise. And fourth, any profit comes from the efforts of a promoter or a third party. Combined, determine whether or not something is a security. Now, you'll have to look to a legal professional for detailed explanation on each of those broken down. But based on what we have all seen from ICOs and really a lot of things in cryptocurrency over the course of the last year and a half, 2 years, I think that the vast majority of ICOs would actually fall into the securities category. But, just in breaking those down, obviously everyone who's investing in an ICO is putting in money. There is a reasonable expectation of profit from any investment you're making. If you're making an investment without looking to profit, then you're an idiot and you should stop spending your money. When it comes down to it, a lot of things have been promoted, right? We're going to talk a little bit about shilling and the shilling culture. Actually, we should just get into that now. Shilling culture is something in crypto where we see it all the time, right? Sometimes you see people getting salty about it on Twitter, throwing shade at other people for promoting. And what are your guys'
on all
thoughts?
Platforms? I mean, it's absolutely run rampant on YouTube. It's absolutely the worst on YouTube because it's completely shameless, and those guys get a lot of views from a lot of the crypto Twitter audience is a little bit more savvy. But yeah, there's this culture of there's this culture of shilling, and there's this counterculture, right? And it really all comes down, I think, for most people, to fair disclosure. So, for instance, I'm wearing a hero hat right now. I thought it would be appropriate to shill one of my bags on the podcast. I've been very transparent with the 3 companies in the space that I personally advise and spend time working with. And so I share information about those companies. That relationship is understood. Outside of that, I've never been paid to shill. It's just not something that I don't care about that. But am I getting all wound up because a cartoon character on Twitter with 40,000 followers is not disclosing that he was paid to talk about some coin? Me personally, I think we have a babysitter culture. I think people are too damn sensitive and not willing to take responsibility. If and there's the cartoon characters I'm talking about, guys. If the XYZ cartoon character with 100,000, 200,000 followers posts a review and doesn't have any disclosure on there that says that he was paid for that review, you should still assume that he was paid for the review. And you should still do your own diligence and complete your own research. And if you get wrecked, it's still your fault, unless that person logged into your account and bought those things for you. So what do you guys think personally? Is it like, yes, you should fully disclose? I believe that. No, I'm not going to report you or give a shit if you don't. I think you should. But I don't think that the conversation should go further than that. So how much of this falls on the responsibility of those following cartoon characters on the internet?
Well, so I just want to jump in here because I know common sense is a fucking superpower nowadays, right? Like to meet someone who has common sense, I mean, Jesus Christ, right? So this is a situation where I think that a lot of people just need to take a step back, right? We're talking about companies, or at least the perception is that they are companies. The only way that companies generate revenue is through sales, period. You do not generate revenue as a company through sales if you're doing something legal. In order to sell, shit doesn't sell itself, right? My entire career has been built around selling and marketing products for companies that have hired me to do so. There's no shame in that, and most people don't look on it as a negative thing. If you're out in the world and look at all the people that we worship in the social media culture, the Gary V's, the Grant Cardones. Like all of these guys built huge
that's our whole businesses
off of selling, right? When I was very young, someone said to me, if you learn how to sell, you will never be broke. And there's nothing illegitimate or illegal or wrong about that. If you've got the ability to get out and generate revenue, good for you. Pat you on the back. I wish you well. I don't know where this level of immaturity around this comes from in this culture, when in reality, if all of us don't get better fucking mouths on us and learn how to get out and be advocates, cryptocurrency is going to fucking die and we're going to watch it.
Yeah. I love the passion there. And, I'm totally there. So I want to make the important distinction again. What should someone do if they have a brand? I mean, we do 10 million impressions a month on Twitter, right? We have a responsibility as a brand. So we're important, we're careful to disclose relationships that we have, especially me. But outside of that, like, I'm not going to go and witch hunt people. And I'm also not going to give a hard time to like the company, right? So for instance, a referral link, if someone shares a referral link, everyone listening should understand that referral link pays a referral commission. That's how that works. It doesn't mean they were paid by the company. People think that these cartoon characters are pulling in 100 Bitcoin to shill some like shitty ICOS. Guys, they're taking like $300 and they're retweeting some link. Like, no, it's not my game. It's no one on this live stream's game, but I don't care. Like, I don't care, and you shouldn't either. And that's where I get kind of worked up, is why people care so damn much.
I mean, people are ridiculous. Social media is its own conversation, and the way people act on social media, and then in comparison to real life, and behavior is just so skewed. And I think that people just get upset and want to be heard, and an easy way to be heard is to be, the whistleblower or think you're a whistleblower, and like that gives you some special right or indication that you're smarter than everybody else. It's like, dude, just relax. Like, Joel, I commend you for dealing with crypto Twitter, man. Like, it absolutely blows my mind seeing some of the stuff on there. Like, I don't know how I wouldn't have the patience to deal with some of these people on Twitter. Whatever, right? If that makes them feel good to try and put a company on blast, it's like, well, first of all, in this most recent circumstance with the Beaksy thing, like, I'm not, affiliated with Beaksy at all, and I don't really have any partakings with them, but like, what Romano put out was just silly. It didn't make any sense. He got proved wrong, and then he just looked like, whatever, dude. It's like, I'm just sick and tired of this stuff. It's like, if you're destroying things more than you're trying to build them, then I just don't really respect that. Like, and that's what I see a lot of people doing on Twitter. And as far as like brands go, if you have a brand, you can do whatever you want with that brand. If you built that brand, then go ahead and do whatever you want with it. You don't need to disclose anything to me. If I can't make my own decisions, then I probably don't deserve my own money. So like, whatever,
Yeah, and I mean, the only caveat is as long as your intentions are pure, right? And I think that, most companies operate with pure intentions to earn a profit without hurting people, right? Because I mean, you're only going to sustain as a business if you are adequately servicing your customers and they want to come back for more. So
I do want to also say I want to jump in real quick too, for anyone listening out there who does have any type of social influence, blog or what have you, just tying back to ICOs, shilling a product, like shilling like an exchange, or shilling a physical product, or a product or service that you use, and shilling even a crypto is very different than shilling an ICO, and it's way different than getting paid to do that, especially if you're getting paid based on the money that you raise. So like that's one thing that we've never done. It's just we've always been careful to never get paid on the ICO side, because again, if the ruling is that these are all securities, you don't want to be someone, especially if you're not a broker dealer, to fall under the microscope of someone who is promoting securities illegally. So if you're out there and you want to take some free tokens to shill an ICO, I strongly encourage you to think twice, especially if you're in the United States. It's not kind of worth your time. But is it on the company? Like, is it on the company if they have a referral program, or more so, because everyone knows what a referral program is, if they have paid influencers, which is, again, the most common practice it's like the future of marketing. It's going to be the biggest sector of paid marketing in 2025, estimated by VaynerMedia, which is a $250 media company, is social media influencing. So it's not going to go away, guys. But is it on the company if they pay someone to babysit that or to police that? What are they supposed to do if the person is supposed to disclose and they choose not to?
Not sure.
Is it up to them? I mean, are you holding that against the company? If they have 1,000 affiliates out there, are you holding it against the company because they don't catch a bad actor on Reddit promising 100x returns or some shit?
Yeah, you can't, right? You can't. I mean, you can't hold a company, and people will. So I shouldn't say can't.
That's what I'm saying.
Anyone,
people are currently.
Yeah, anyone can hold someone, but I think just again from a common business practice point of view, I mean, no, you shouldn't hold a sales rep accountable for the company's overarching goals. Now, that being said, often a company can be held liable for the things that a representative says. So there's the ability to cause some negative backlash. So I do think companies need to make sure that if they're going to be eliciting or having people go out and sell their product, they should be training them on what they can and can't say. What are the best practices? How do you sell? How do you not sell? Where's the line? Right? Because in crypto, that's the challenge, is nobody has a fucking line. Everyone's an anonymous cartoon character, and this banter back and forth between people, all respect to both of them. I could give it, I don't get emotionally tied to what people say on the internet because I'm an adult. But aside from that, these people are going off on things that are just like, if that was a professional conversation, God almighty. I mean, imagine if the two companies in question were Google and Apple having that Twitter war.
That would be great.
Yeah,
I just really wonder what this is, just a fucking crypto Twitter fluke thing that we're just talking about right now, and that everyone's getting pissed over or I don't think this happens anywhere else. So in the end,
on the Kardashians, I've seen it happen on the Kardashians before.
You don't see Logan Paul or whatever, getting backlash for, shilling all the products he gets. It's just, it kind of comes with territory. So moving on, I would absolutely love to take a look at a Bitcoin chart and determine how wrecked we are and when we should start buying, if ever. So is that good? Should we do that?
Yeah, sure. There's one last thing that I want to mention. I think that we may have not touched upon, and that's the fact that ICOs, companies, they can register to be compliant with security laws. So that means they will be security. There's no way that there's no future for ICOs as long as they comply with the rules there are. And some ICOs don't have to comply with the security laws because they simply won't be a security. But it's very important for people to make the distinction that the fact that some ICOs might be securities and that this is going to cause a lot of blah, blah, blah trouble does not mean that there are no ICOs in the future and that there are no ICOs that are actually selling compliant securities. I mean, for example, Storecoin, not shilling. They did everything and they registered with the SEC and they're fully compliant. So, I mean, if you want to be sure you're investing in something that's not going to bite your ass, make sure that whether they got their asses covered when it comes to regulations.
I just hope we get a reform on participation. I think just to close that loop there, I think that the SEC stuff is extremely promising. Again, they're not banning it. They could have just said, fuck this. It's not even the amount of money that we're talking about, a couple $2 billion, ultimately isn't even something that's traditionally that's one hedge fund in the traditional market. So at the end of the day, I think it's really, really good that they're doing these things. And I think that they need to keep some regulation in place to help keep bad actors out and protect investors. What needs to be reformed is we got to find a better way to get retail people involved, not just in legal securities offerings, security token offerings, but also be able to participate in venture capital offerings that traditional startups have. Imagine if a company like Uber would have used a Kickstarter style to sell actual shares, securities of their product. Like that would just be an incredible opportunity for the layman. And I think that we'll see that because Silicon Valley is pushing for it and has proven that it's profitable for the government and everything else. So I think it'll take more time. But when we see that, I think we see ICOs come back to the retail investor. I think for the next 2 years, you only see what you see now, which is non-US or accredited US funds. And you're going to see pre-sale deals and you're going to see much smaller raises, which are more responsible. And that's all healthy for the market. So don't get too upset about what you're seeing right now. I think it's necessary. And I am optimistic about reform allowing retail to get involved.
Mm-hmm. On to Bitcoin. What do we got?
Ronnie, you want to take it?
Yeah, sure. We got a lot of red, of course. I think most of the watchers and listeners have seen that. What did happen, and I didn't think that would happen so fast, is that after we actually broke down the 6K support that everyone has been talking about for a while, and we were kind of debating whether it was going to hold and that maybe BACT was going to, blew us out of away from that bottom back up into a bull market. It didn't happen. And what did happen is that after we broke down to 6K, we started to consolidate around 5.5 a little bit. And I didn't expect us to actually touch on 5,000 this fast. 5,000, 4,900 is a very important support level. Why? Because in beginning of September last year, we hit a high of $5,000 on Bitcoin. And after that, Bitcoin got rejected. It actually fell all the way back to $3,000, which was the signal to actually go up all the way to $20,000. This level, $5,000, was never retested ever since we left that station. Usually when you have a resistance, which then gets nuked by price action, when price comes back to it, it is often a very, 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 very strong area of support. So what we're currently looking at is Bitcoin touched down into this green box or between 4.9 and 5,000. And honestly, I think the support of that block could actually be all the way down to 4.7. Is this going to hold? I don't know. There has been a lot of speculation on where our bottom is going to be, and there's various ways people have debating about this, but we had a descending triangle, and a descending triangle usually, if it breaks down the height of the descending triangle. So what I want to show you guys is, why doesn't this not work? All right, let me just take this. So we had a descending triangle, and which started around $12,000, and our bottom was 6K. Usually, if we want to calculate the target of a descending triangle, we take the height from the descending triangle, which in this case is around 50%, and then you take that 50% and you add it to your breakout level, which was 6K-ish. And if we then draw another 50% down, obviously we will end up on 3K. What happens when we reach 3K? We see this beautiful resistance that was from the 9th of June, and it got nuked. It got retested in September So this is obviously a very strong area of support as well. If once we kind of break down these other supports around 4.3K and 5K, are we going to reach 3K? Doesn't have to be. The hit rates on these descending triangles actually reaching their targets is probably around 50 to 60%. So could it end up having support somewhere in between? Yeah, likely. So for now, I'm actually looking for a bounce from our current level, which is 4.8 to 5K. And what is very likely to happen is a retest of 5.5. If 5.5 gets rejected, we'll probably retest or support at 5K again. And the more times we're going to go down to 5K, the more likely it's going to break. And then we're probably going to visit the 4.3, 4.1, 4.2, 4.4K range. It's really tough to say. From a broader perspective, like larger perspective, macro perspective, there is the 2014 chart, of course, that we were talking about earlier with Kyle. Historically, what Bitcoin has done after a giant bull market is that it actually always retested the high of the prior bull market. So we had the bull market that went into the end of 2013. And by the end of 2013, we had an all-time high on Bitcoin back then, and we retraced all the way back to our prior support of the bull run before that. If that's going to happen for Bitcoin, we could see all the way down to around $1,000, which, I mean, would be super painful to see happening. From a price action perspective, it is not that illogical that it's going to happen. Honestly, I'm not going to call those shots, but what I think that we need to do with Bitcoin right now is we need to stop thinking about where our bottoms are potentially be, but we need to trade the trend. So we're going to try and establish our resistances. And once we have our resistances, once price comes back into those resistances, it's our duty to short it. So basically, currently 5.5K is probably going to be a resistance. When price comes back into that level, we want to short it. If price comes back into the 6K range, we want to short it. It's going to be really tough to make any real long calls except for the really obvious ones around 5K and then 4.4K and all the way down to 3K. But I'm honestly currently just going to try and look for shorts.
Yeah, so there's a ton of money to be made playing that. If you want and you want a kind of hands-off strategy, you can take some Tether or fiat or something, and you can put bids down at those levels that you just mentioned. And then if you catch a drop and you set an alarm on your trading view or on your phone, you set an alarm and you catch a drop, you can log in and hopefully have a quick 10%, scalp or a bounce back. And that's a nice way to play for more of a casual trader who doesn't want to, make 30 trades a day. I like the idea of buying spot BTC at those levels, and I'm actually going to be buying spot BTC at those levels. So, and 1K to me, if it's a follow or fade, we're not going to see $1,000 Bitcoin. It's just too cheap. I just don't believe that. If I'm wrong, I'll be wrong, and I'll still be here. But
sorry, go ahead, Kyle.
You're fine. That's some really good analysis, Ronnie. I think you highlighted all the major areas that we talked about. And from a psychological standpoint, I know one thing that we discussed over the course of the past week or so is, we've talked a lot about BACT coming out and potential ETF approvals in 2019. And, for these large institutional players that are creating these products and making investments in the space, whether it be an exchange or an ETF or investing in, various ICOs, these people make bets, but they make calculated bets. And so for me, from a psychological standpoint, this sell-off, I'm not saying that the people that are starting BACT or have the potential to get ETFs approved are the ones that are igniting this sell-off, but it doesn't surprise me that there's a major sell-off before the upstart of these products and these companies, because if I was someone who had a lot of power in the finance community and was starting a crypto exchange, then I would see who I needed to contact and make sure that the product that I was offering, which will be Bitcoin, was as cheap as possible as soon as I opened my doors. Granted, they're going to make money either way it goes. They're they're offering futures contracts, so there's that. But the fact of the matter is, for me, that I think that these entrants into the space are not going to. I don't think that they would start these investment tools if they thought Bitcoin was going to 1K. I think that they believe in the space long term and don't see capitulation at that point. 3K, yeah, sure, there's a possibility, but for me right now, I'm looking to be a buyer between 46 and 4,900 per BTC, and I'll start with that. But I'm going to wait to see some consolidation here. This looks very aggressive. I'm not going to be a buyer right now. This is just too violent of a sell-off. So.
Yeah, I think the only play now is to wait for the short opportunity, which isn't 5K. It's more likely that previous resistance that Ronnie pointed out. So I don't hate that play either. I don't leverage trade a whole lot personally, just because the fund trades on the CBOE and I have exposure to it on that side. If I was going to be a little bit more active, that would be the play I'm looking for. But at the same time that I'm actually shorting with leverage, I'm okay to buy spot for long term, because I truly, truly believe, and I can afford to be wrong, that in a few years' time, $4,000 or $6,000 Bitcoin will be irrelevant to me. It will not matter what my average entry was in there. And I think my average entry on Bitcoin lifetime is sub $500 still. I bought the vast majority of my Bitcoin at $260 and didn't buy much ever after. So, I'm in a different boat, but I like sub 6K Bitcoin, and I'm going to like sub 3K Bitcoin even more if it comes to that. And I just hope I'm not wrong. Otherwise, you guys are going to see this podcast switch over to fantasy football.
Yeah, that's another thing. I mean, it's just funny hearing. Sorry, Ron, it's just funny hearing you say, like, you bought your Bitcoin, primarily sub $300. Like, this has got to be like top 2 or 3 best performing asset classes like in the past decade. Yeah. Like, it's really hard when you zoom in on this and you experience 10 months of what we've experienced. But the fact of the matter is that this thing has really only moved north for its entire lifetime.
Yep.
So yeah, these pullbacks happen, but all we're seeing after this pullback is that the space is getting stronger. Products are advancing themselves, and products are being introduced by very, very important people in the financial economy. So I'm not too distressed here from a long-term perspective. Like, if this is money you need now, then yeah, sure, hedge yourself, turn that short until you see something else happen. But if not, just enjoy this, learn, and get better.
So we should also real quick, just because the whole show was kind of about ICOs, what's Ether going to do? I mean, Ether's down to what are your thoughts on Ethereum right now? I mean, we kind of lowered a lot of our exposure sub 400 when it kind of broke through 400. And now I'm looking to become a buyer potentially again. I have a target personally of about $120. I mean, what are your guys' thoughts on Ether from a fundamental perspective, and then maybe a quick TA look?
Yeah, so I mean, from a fundamental perspective, I've shared this quite a few times. I'm not the biggest believer in Ethereum or its use case as of now. I know they've got a lot that they say that they're working on, and we'll see if that actually comes to fruition. But from an FA standpoint, Ether for me is a fade, not a follow. Just until further notice, probably. But
looks like Ronnie's pulling up a chart right now.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, perfect. You have the dollar chart. Good.
Yeah, I mean, from a fundamental perspective, I still think there is a lot of room for Ethereum, but it needs to catch up with the promised it had. And to be fair, there is no other project necessarily ahead of solving the real scalability issue. I mean, there's projects out there that are faster than Ethereum. Reason why they actually could be faster is because they could launch without that much of a backload on their back, with people actually already building and using and mining it. So I mean, nobody actually has solved the issue when it comes to having both security, scalability, and real decentralization. And I think all these projects are still in the running. So to say that Ethereum is done for, I would say that's a bit of an overstatement. What I do agree upon is that in its current state, with the current market cap it has, it's likely overvalued. And,
I think Ethereum Ethereum really led the rise of altcoins in 2017. Ethereum was the first altcoin I ever bought. It was around $12. I bought it because it was cheap and because I was less experienced on the altcoin side. And I think we start to have opportunity to see that again. Ripple is kind of, XRP is kind of the new retail favorite. You know, again, when I was buying Ethereum at $12, Ripple was like 0.002 cents. No one talked about it. It was still very underknown, and that's not the case anymore. So Ethereum has some things in its that make it a little bit more promising. And one of those is first mover advantage. It's still Ethereum, and people know what Ethereum can do. I'll never forget the flash crash when it just literally crashed down to like 3 cents. I was watching it live when that happened. I have a long history with Ethereum. I think that the downside is probably that wick from May of last year on at the highest point. But right now I have a target of about $120 on Ether. We've seen more sell volume than this before. We just don't have any buyers stepping in yet. So I think when we lose some of this volatility and we get a little bit more stability, buyers are going to feel more confident. And as much as I don't love Ethereum fundamentals as it relates to other coins, I still think that they have that first mover advantage. They have that Coinbase advantage. They have that market recognition advantage. You can't forget that.
Birch, could you calculate what the market cap of Ethereum would be if it goes back to $15?
No, I'd be curious to know. I don't even remember what the market cap was when I bought it. Basically what happened was the Bitcoin ETF got denied. Hey, same movie, different ending, or whatever they say. The Bitcoin ETF of early 2017 that most people don't remember got denied. Freaked me out. I wanted to get out of Bitcoin, and so I sold all my Bitcoin and market bought Ethereum, and the rest is history. And went from there. So I don't remember what the market cap was.
Yeah. Because that it would be just funny to compare it to other projects out there if it would actually go back all the way to $15. Because before
if
it
that
started,
happens, it's dead. There's no way. It's dead.
Yeah,
it would survive that.
It is like this entire run that started in December 2016 is so parabolic that this entire resistance that existed before was never tested. So there are huge liquidity gaps down here. There's a few levels of interest for Ethereum for now, because we broke our bottom. We could actually be in a capitulation, but let's assume that we're going to have a bit of a bear market continuing, and in a bear market it's profitable to short resistance. So if we come back into the $170 range, it's probably a good place to start opening a short. I would probably say that would get invalidated around 185 $190 dollars. That's really also going to depend on how Bitcoin is going to move, and that's the tricky part. If Bitcoin shoots up $1,000 tomorrow, Ethereum could actually shoot back up again, but it fundamentally could lose a lot more ground. And then the next area of interest would probably, for a little bounce play, would probably be around $137, and there's probably some support at 110. But beyond that, like the real money order block, if we break below 135, would probably be all the way around $80 to $100. So that's a pretty scary thought. And if that doesn't hold, I don't see it holding. Although it's probably going to go back to 50. It's a pretty scary chart, to be honest.
I can remember countless people who were early to crypto in my socials, like my real life circle, who started with Ethereum and started by buying it at $250, $300, or above 150. And that was in June of 2017. If you got into crypto in June 2017, a lot of people would say, man, you probably did really, really well. And the truth is, on paper, they did. If you bought almost anything. But I obviously still talk to these people. They're my friends, and they're all still holding all of their crypto. I mean, so I know that some of those retail people have not capitulated yet. So is that still to come? I don't know what price Ethereum has to break to get my buddies out who bought it like 250 and just didn't sell 1400 or anywhere near it. I don't know what it's going to take, but it's going to take probably sub 100, I would imagine. And then that's, you know, if real sellers stepped in, especially with all the ICOs, all the money they raised, if real sellers stepped in, it could decimate Ethereum, and it could be a story that people tell. It could be the VHS of this generation, where it had that use for a long time. It dominated the market for like a year, but ultimately it just wasn't quite there. And DVDs and Blu-rays take over. That's extremely possible to see across some of these. And because Ethereum doesn't have what Ripple has, it may lose. It already has lost its share on market, so it may very well lose its number 2 place in the retail investor heart, you know, because the retail investor was Ethereum maximalist until now.
Well, I think we've definitely got a lot to see. There's a lot that is about to occur within this market. We are all going to get to bear witness to it. But you can rest assured, those of you who continue to tune in, we will be here no matter what the price of Bitcoin or Ether is. We're coming. We want to make sure that we continue to
put a disclaimer on that. Can we put a disclaimer like, as long as Bitcoin's like above 3K, we'll probably be here. Below that, the live views might be so low, we might just take a month or 2 off. But if you guys keep tuning in, we will keep showing up.
Yes. And we will be back Wednesday, 11:30 a.m. Central Standard Time. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will see you on Wednesday.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.